Last time on the Region Free Gamers podcast, Anthony joined us to talk Technosoft.
Tell my girlfriend, get out the bed. Come on.
Kicks her out.
Time for Herzog.
Which got us excited this week to talk about the Sega Mega Drive Mini. Will Arnaldo cook some spicy Puerto Rican hot takes?
If I had to remove any other games, personally, it'd be Sonic and Sonic 2.
Will Ozzy's disagreement with Arnaldo make him go Super Saiyan?
Arnie, do you know that you're completely wrong? Like, do you even realize how wrong you are right now?
Does special guest Mike have a secret message for Paul's wife?
Oh, but yeah, and again, shout out to Christy. Hi.
Find out today.
Hello everyone, welcome to the Region Free Gamers podcast, the podcast that's fluent in gaming. My name's Paul, and I'll be your host for today's show. And of course, I would be a lonely man without my co-hosts sitting next to me, thousands of kilometers away, in Rhode Island, by way of Puerto Rico, the man who didn't have the grace to be born while the Genesis was at its peak, Arnaldo.
Gotta go fast, or something.
Wow, dude.
I do what Nintendo...
I can feel the excitement for today's show. Out of Brooklyn by way of Cuba, Echo the Dolphin's biggest fan, Ozzy.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm walking over here. It's Ozzy.
Not bad, actually. I mean, you do live there.
Yeah.
I get a pass, even if it's a shady Brooklyn accent.
There you go. And joining us again as a guest out of Toronto, our good buddy Mike.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me back, guys. Much appreciated.
Hey, man. Thanks for joining us. And hey, everyone, as always, if you enjoy the show, tell a friend. And don't forget to leave us a rating and review on the Apple Podcasts app or whatever app you use to listen. 5 stars, please. And we're pretty happy, with how the show's been coming along. And we've got some exciting things planned for the future. It wouldn't be possible without the awesome folks we've had supporting us. So if you've already given us a rating, awesome, thank you. And if you haven't, please go do so. And so today we're going to be talking about the Genesis Mini because A, it's one of our favorite systems ever, and the lineup is fantastic. So how could we not talk about it? And because B, we had hardly any prep to do for it. And
you can't admit
I'm
that,
always a big
Paul.
fan of. I you know what, man? I've had enough.
That's integral to
I'm
the
just gonna
podcast.
broadcast.
Again, I mean, I'm not sure what you guys are talking about because I was up all night doing research.
Well, that's what we have guests do is do all the work.
Oh,
Mike's auditioning for a third appearance, so he's very nervous about
hazing. It's a hazing, got it.
Yeah, before the show, Mike is like, "Yeah, guys, I have a list written down, and I was doing research and so on." And I like stumbled onto the microphone like, "Yeah, I just got up. What are we doing?"
Yeah, we swear it's gonna be a good
anyway.
episode. We're very confident in our improvisational skills.
Oh yeah, and I mean, dude, it's the Genesis. Like, I'm pretty sure we're gonna be okay talking about this. Like, it's
no doubts.
Like I said, one of our favorite systems. Even young Arnaldo, who wasn't born during its heyday, is like, I'm all about the Genesis, right, buddy?
I was all about the Nomad, like an actual cool kid.
Oh man, big guns.
I don't know if you
Big
know
guns,
this.
I don't know how I
deep
keep
cuts, hot
forgetting.
takes.
I've always been ahead of the curve, gaming wise.
You had the original Switch,
and a fortune of batteries.
Exactly. My dad worked at Duracell, and that's like the sadder version of my uncle worked at Nintendo.
Yep.
I like to think, Arnie, that you don't have a Switch because you still hold a grudge that the Nomad did it first and did it better.
It really did. I will stay. Actually, did the Turbo Express come out before the Nomad?
That's a really good question.
Oh, yeah.
Probably yes.
Yeah.
Again,
Yes.
Why isn't NEC still making
no, there's
consoles?
no doubt.
They were visionaries.
I think it's because the turbo graphics cost a mortgage payment. Sorry, I should rephrase that. The turbo graphics was affordable. The Turbo Express and the Turbo CD.
Yes.
By the way, have you guys ever seen the box for the Turbo CD?
Isn't it like just as big as the Turbo Graphics box? And then when you open it, it's
Dude.
like 90% styrofoam and then the thing in the middle.
Yeah, man. It's actually it's like 2 feet by 1.5 feet. Or like, it's actually the biggest console box I've ever seen. And the CD unit, I can fit it like in the palm of my hand. It's bonkers that they ever had a box that large for it. I think 2 feet by 1.5 feet.
Is that just like an American thing where they were like, we need to make sure it looks really big in the box or else people are going to think it's a piece of junk?
I had no doubts.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
Yeah, like if you're spending that much
that's
money,
pretty much
you
it.
better get something that looks like it costs that much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine
Yeah,
that
pretty-
between the 70s and the early 2000s, the amount of styrofoam that was thrown out into the sea and into landfills in India or anywhere else in the world is unmeasurable, just so that Paul could have his Turbo CD.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Paul.
It's funny because I think people really talk about how much they hate the look of the Sega CD and the 32X, like when you put them all together and the thing looks like it's had, some kind of mutation. But the Turbo CD, in my opinion, just looks like a growth on the back of the Turbo Graphics, like the first iteration of it.
I agree.
Yeah.
Looks horrendous.
It's a turbo pimple. Yeah.
The Turbo Duo, on the other hand, is like the most beautiful console ever made.
Come on, man.
It is sleek,
I
man.
love
I do like that Turbo Duo.
The Turbo Duo and the CDX, I think, are like the two slickest consoles.
Yeah.
But the CDX just looks like one of those, I guess,
Like a Walkman?
late Walkmans. Yeah.
Hell yeah, that's the cool thing
like
about
a
it.
Walkman that just has a slot for a cartridge.
Exactly.
Which I guess is cool.
And I can confirm my cousin actually did carry it in his bag and use it as a portable CD player.
What?
I would have used it as a portable
like
CD
there-
player too.
Yeah, there was a person who actually did that.
That's the way to go about it, I think.
I was the guy that had like the PSP as my MP3 player back in 2004, 2005. And I was so cool that
Nice.
people didn't even like approach me. They were just like, oh man, we probably shouldn't like talk to him right now.
Oh, man.
Anyhow, so on the last time we had Mike on was on the Phantasy Star episode.
right.
And before we get to the Genesis, it's worth mentioning that my wife listened to the Phantasy Star episode and afterwards she's like, great episode. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why didn't you talk about what Mike does for a living and how he got there? Because that's the most interesting thing
Big
about
shout
him.
out for trying to improve the show.
And I was, yeah, exactly right. She's integral, and I was like, well, I don't know if that's the most interesting thing about him. He has other fine qualities, and she's like, no, it's the most interesting thing. You guys have to talk about that next time.
Oh, that's cool. Hi, Christy.
And so, yeah, no, and now that I've set it up, like, boy, Mike, you better deliver,
Mike,
because
you are now defined by your profession. You have no other redeeming qualities.
Oh my god. Okay.
So, okay, I'll set it up I'll give you the alley-oop here and you can dunk it. So, first of all, Mike, where do you work? What do you do there?
I work at Ubisoft Toronto. I'm a project coordinator there. So basically, on the production side of things, working in project management, helping with mostly coordinating kind of communication through the different departments, and my department specifically, I'm in the game design department. So we handle most of the game design stuff, which is pretty kind of the kind of the tip of the spear in a sense, because it's sort of where a lot of things start, but by no means is it the most important part or the only part, because there's so many kind of pieces to all of it. So yeah, that's what I do. I've been there for about almost, it's been 2.5 years.
So were you
God, it's
were you
already
in,
been that long, eh?
Yeah, I know, man. It blows my mind how fast time has passed since I started there, especially, well, I mean, we'll get into what brought me there in a minute, but yeah.
Yeah, I guess what I was going
Sorry,
to ask
Ozzy,
is,
you had
were you in game development before that?
I was basically, I was in game development, at a bunch of smaller sort of studios. It's kind of part of the story. I don't know, maybe I should,
Yeah, go for it.
So
Yeah, let's hit the time machine
Yeah.
and start from the beginning.
So let's go back.
So you were born in 70 what?
Whoa, Arnie.
Well, Paul said start from the beginning.
Okay, I mean, I'm not the guy.
It's
I'm not
80
the guy
watts,
to get
80
mad.
watts.
I'm not the guy to get mad when somebody thinks I'm older than I am. But Arnie, y'all gave me a decade. I know we got the same voice, but come on, son. So anyway, man, how?
No, but seriously, how old are you?
I'm 39. See, I thought we talked about this. When I was on Fantasy Star, didn't I? Anyway, whatever. So
We did. I'm sure we did.
So basically, I was an elementary school teacher up until about close to 10 years ago, basically about 8 years. And I basically went to school to be an elementary school teacher. Got my certification to teach in upstate New York, as well as in Ontario. And I taught in both places, not at the same time, obviously. And teaching is actually why I came to Toronto. I wanted to be back in Canada, but didn't want to go back to Quebec because that's where I'm from. So went to Ontario, was teaching French and a whole host of other things to elementary school kids. And basically I woke up one day and I was kind of like, this is a great job. I've got tons of perks that nobody that you can't really sneeze at, and feel pretty good about it. I'm doing all right, but I'm bored. And I think, the kids deserve a lot better than that, as corny as that sounds. And I also felt like I wanted to go for it, and video games was something I've loved forever, and it was like the one thing that I hadn't even ever tried to kind of get into. And without any kind of background other than being a fan, with no experience in it whatsoever, like I didn't have any coding experience, I didn't have any like artistic experience, I didn't have any official experience in anything. I was just like, okay, I'm going to do it. So I quit and basically resigned from the school board. There's that famous saying in Hunt for Red October where Sean Connery is like, when Magellan, or was it Christopher Columbus? I don't fucking know. So when they crossed the ocean, he burned their ships, so they wouldn't want to go back. And basically I was like, I don't want to go back. So dick. So I was like, I don't want to go back. And so I resigned from the school board, which there's a bunch of people who are listening right now who probably want to be teachers who just want to stab me right now, because they're just like, you had everything, like and it was like, I don't know, it was funny. I mean, at the time, like, thankfully, I'm surrounded by really great people then and now, and so I had nothing but support, and some people were even more stoked than I was. Like, they were just like, yeah. Go. Like, this is going to be amazing. This is what you've been wanting to do your whole life. And so I spent the next year at one of those diploma mill. I'm not even going to give it the dignity of saying what the school is, but I went to one of those diploma mill schools, and it was funny because I had been a teacher before, and not that I had been an amazing teacher, but I'd been a teacher before. And so when I got there, literally the first day, I knew it was going to be a disaster. I knew that the entire school was crock. And I was like, oh, okay, that's no good. But I'm here, and I'm going to get the most I can out of it. And thankfully, it was only like a year. And so sort of busted my butt. And after that was kind of networking, and ended up meeting a bunch of people in the Toronto indie game community. Toronto has a really strong indie community in terms of game development. At the time when I first started networking, there was stuff like Ben Rivers had come out with Home. Drinkbox had just come out with Guacamelee, which was huge.
Yeah.
Home was huge in terms of the timing and the money spent to produce it. Like, Home was a massive success, and I'm actually good friends with Ben, and Ben is like just so incredibly pro, and he's so incredibly smart, and he just, he makes amazing stuff. And what else was there? Sword and Sorcery from Cappy had just come out I think it might have been just a few months before that. And there was N Plus was still making waves because it was on Xbox Live Arcade. And so there was just tons of stuff. coming out. There was already hype for Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time was going to come out soon, and everybody was, so there was just tons of stuff happening, tons of people. And so I got to sort of be around that. And then but there's also, Toronto's weird. It's like a city of extremes. So there's like a lot of one-man shows, or sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's one-person shops making their, sort of weird indie games. But there's also, and then there's Ubisoft. Ubisoft had just opened up, and it was and not the first AAA studio. There's a big history with that, but it was the first one in a while. And, but other than that, there was a lot of, not too much mid-size. There was a lot of mobile studios. And so I got a job as a production assistant at first, and then later as a producer at Get Set Games. They're a mobile studio. They hit it big in the kind of the original App Store, like free-to-play boom with stuff like Mega Jump and Mega Run. And worked there for a little while, and then I kind of got out of games directly, and I was working at a place called Shaftesbury for a couple years, and we were in the digital wing of their sort of TV production company, so we did a lot of weird stuff there. We did a lot of like VR projects and kind of multimedia projects for their TV properties, and we did like a big augmented reality kind of live action game based on Murdoch Mysteries. I don't know if you guys know that. That's like Murder, She Wrote in Canada.
Did that yeah. My wife's a big fan of Murdoch Mysteries. But did that ever actually get released?
Yeah.
That augmented reality?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it was like a real-time thing. So basically every week we had a live event that was either across Canada or in London. We had one date in London. So I was flying out to all these locations, talking to actors and extras, making sure they were costumed up. And remember, like a few years ago, I was sitting in a classroom watching kids pick their nose, so it was kind of like...
So now you're just watching adults pick their nose.
Yeah, exactly. Oh man, you have no idea.
Cool.
So it was kind of nuts, and I'm just flying by the seat of my pants and doing the best I can, and the whole time I'm like, what the holy fuck, yeah, I guess I do it this way, and then we just kind of went.
Mike, if I may mention real quick,
yeah, sure.
I'm about to turn 30 in 2 days,
right?
And I have a profession, and I've worked my way through it, but I think like you, there's always one passion that you've always wanted to do, but you're very hesitant to, kind of fly out there without a net and really put yourself out there and at risk. And especially as you get older and you start having plans of like family, etc. But man, I mean, you've kind of given me a little bit of wind in my sails, because if you were able to do it and it was just kind of like you had the good gig, you had, the benefits, you were on the up and up. And you decided to just do away with that and just chase, something that you were really excited about. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I want to hear and that most people want to hear, that, it's working out for you, even though it's kind of a risk at all times, but it's working out for you. And you made it to Ubisoft, which is a, ridiculously huge company. And, it's kind of like top of the mountain in a way.
It was, yeah. I mean, first of all, thank you for saying that. It's really kind. It's kind of weird because, there's definitely been moments where it's been kind of tough. And at the same time, though, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, it's been so hard. Like, what a grew. Like, no, it's not really like that. It's, there was just definitely there was a lot of work. And there were definitely a couple days where I was kind of banging my head against the wall and, kind of getting pretty upset and just going like, is this going to work? What the hell am I doing? Yeah. But at the same time, it's the kind of thing where in retrospect, when I look back, I look at how lucky I was, how fortunate I was, and I try to be really gracious and appreciative of that. But I also see how it's like, you know what? It wasn't actually that hard or that bad or that crazy, it was mostly just about showing up. Like it was just show up, put your sword in, do your best. And it's kind of, that's weird. It's weird, because on one hand, I would tell anybody if they're thinking about doing something like that go for it. But I'm also really aware that it's like, you know, I was really lucky. Like, I didn't have a family. I wasn't attached to anyone. I was financially stable. I wasn't in any kind of huge debt. Like, there were all these things that sort of led it to be, yeah, like, you can do this. Like, you can take a chance. You can go for it. Yeah, you know, yeah, it was kind of scary and hard. But if I had been dealing with a whole bunch of that stuff, I don't know if I would have done it. Like, it would have been a lot dicier. But then I would have had other things that would, you know, if I had a family, obviously, then I would have a lot more. What am I trying to say? I would have other things that I would, you know, find fulfilling, like other things that I'd be like, okay, this is where I'm going to get my fulfillment from.
Yes.
You know,
yeah, exactly.
But I think, you know, it's crazy because there were moments where it was really hard and weird, and people would go, "Well, do you regret it?" And thankfully the answer is never. Like, not even at all. You know, I miss the people. I miss the friends I made when I was teaching. I mean, I'm not going to lie. Once in a while, I'm like, man, summer's off. I used to have summers off, you know, like that's, but at the end of the day, when I think about what I've learned, when I think about myself and just about the industry and about, you know, not even just games, like other things too, like television and film, because I've been involved with that stuff now a little bit. Even with what little I know, I still know so much more about the creation of all this stuff. And again, obviously you don't need to do that to appreciate something and love it. But as someone who loves to immerse myself in the things that I love and know everything about it, it was just like, I don't know, like I wouldn't replace any of it. And
yeah, you know, I have a few friends that are teachers as well, and you know, they're writers, and so they like the time off. And I look at them and I say, wow, you know, if I only had the summers off, the things that I could do, the games that could be played, you know, I could write books, novels.
Yeah.
But you know, at the end of the day, you really just have to find something that you can wake up for, man.
Yep.
Even if it's the best benefits, even if it's the best money, you know, you spend 70% of your waking hours, you know, in some of the best cases, at least in the US, in your job. And yeah, you know, you can, you know, do better with people that are nice around you in your job, etc. But at the end of the day, you're working, you're still working. And so if you don't have the enthusiasm to get up for that, it just really makes your life a whole sludge. And, you know, for someone like me that's prone to clinical depression, you know, that's an absolute killer. Mm-hmm. So it's an ongoing dialogue, you know, and you know, I guess it's sort of like a millennial thing now, they call it, you know, of, you know, doing what you love and what your passion is. And I have a little bit of an issue with that because I think our, you know, earlier generations, our forefathers, you know, at the very least in the 20th century, they had fairly regular work hours. They were able to afford a house. They were able to do anything, you know, that they wanted with just a regular old job, you know, and there wasn't this emphasis on, you know, kind of going for it. But, you know, nowadays you just kind of have to think, okay, you know, it's going to be a commitment. You're literally going to dedicate your life, which is the most precious thing you have, to this thing. Are you willing to do it for something that you don't give a crap about?
Yeah.
And that's very difficult. And for you, I mean, you were teaching kids. I mean, dude, it's awesome. Like, you're actually, you know, improving the future.
Yeah. I could tell you some stories. I could tell you how some of the sausage is made. It's a little weird, but
well, Mike, listen. If you can take out the crayon from the next Einstein's mouth, then you've done a very good job for humanity.
You're right. You're right, Ozzy. What I'm saying is, you know, you can't save them all. You know what I mean? Some kids,
you can't save them all.
Some kids out there past the pier, and you're just like, yo, man, here's a life preserver, and the kid's just like, what's a life preserver? And you're like, oh, fuck it. You know,
don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it.
Be on your way.
But just to
the other thing.
Oh, sorry. But just to wrap up.
No, go ahead, Mike. Go ahead.
I feel like just to wrap up, I was just gonna say that, you know, Ubisoft was always the goal, It was in my mind when I left. It was like, that's where I want to go. And it was pretty crazy to get there. I finally did. I also should mention I worked at a place called Secret Location for a few months who specialize in VR stuff. If you guys are into PSVR, they made a game. I worked on a game for a little while with them called Blasters of the Universe. It's friggin' awesome. It's hilarious and really fun.
Cool.
So little plug, little shout out for that.
Yeah,
And
I wanted to ask Mike, because I know people who listen to this will be curious. What are some of the projects you have worked on, or I guess some of your favorites?
So, I mean, it's weird, right? Because like when you're kind of in the middle of it,
yeah.
Especially in, I mean, I can only speak for myself, but like I've always been involved on the production side of it. So you'd be surprised how little I get to sit and actually play the games I'm working on. Sometimes you'd be really surprised. You'd be like, oh my God, like what? But Mega Jump 2 was the first game that I was acting producer on when it launched. And, that's always going to be sort of near and dear to my heart. It's a really fun game. It's really colorful and beautiful. The 3D art is incredible. And after that, I guess, at Shaftesbury / Smoke Bomb, the digital wing was called Smoke Bomb for a while. We did a VR project, and this was like early VR. We did it for, HTC Vive. And we did, a VR sort of supplement to this slasher TV show called Slasher, that was on Super Channel. And it was like a really gory show. And we did this great, I had to be sort of on set for some of that. And shooting for VR is just nuts. Like you might, like, I bet if I asked you guys, I mean, maybe it's different now, but I joked around that I would ask people, I would go, yeah, so you're probably thinking, oh, like joke around. Hey, Mike, what do you do to capture everything for VR? Like you just set up a bunch of cameras in a ball? And we're like, yeah. Yeah, that's exactly what you do. You set up a bunch of cameras in a ball. And it's like, wow, that sounds pretty... And I'm like, hard? Yeah, it's really hard. And like the technicians handling it, it's like the technology wasn't there at the time to properly do it. So it was like, yeah, you bet your ass it's a bunch of cameras in a ball. And, so it's really interesting stuff. And, but I guess... what I'm obviously going to be most, and I'm proud of my work on Blasters too. But I guess what I'm probably most going to be proud of is what I'm working on right now. And, I can't talk about that. I can't talk about it. But obviously pretty excited.
All right. Nod for the listeners. If it's Mario and Rabbids 2, just give them a wink.
Oh, just saw it.
Shit.
Just saw it.
Don't get fired. Don't get fired, Mike. Don't listen to this guy.
Yeah, I'm absolutely ignoring everything Arnie is saying right now.
That's actually kind of the general MO.
Region freeway. That's a region freeway.
Also, just as an aside, a very quick aside, I believe it was Cortez who burned his ships when he came to the New World.
You're right.
That fucker.
The only reason I know that is
nice.
because the Puerto Rican educational system, surprisingly, very focused on what happened in that,
I thought you looked it up.
Of land.
I thought you just looked it up and you were like,
No.
oh no, Hunt for Red October, okay, and like, but no, you actually, man, Arnie, I'm impressed. That's pretty rad.
I know. Shout out to my
Puerto Rico
social studies teacher.
All right, cool, man. Hey, Mike, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, man.
I like hearing that story. Not to like bring it to myself, but like Mike and I were actually going through a similar thing concurrently.
I was gonna say
I
that.
had left my job.
I was gonna say that too.
Yeah, it was almost at the same time that we had both left our previous jobs and kind of like, jumped into the river and it was sink or swim. Yeah. So it was fun kind of like, seeing where we were each going, and like we ended up both being successful in our new jobs, which is really cool. And it's a fun story because look, I don't want to put people in the poorhouse or whatever, but if you're worried about taking your shot, just take your shot. Like if there's something you want to do, worst case scenario, you can probably go back to what you were doing before, right? So, there's fear there, but like I don't know, man. I would have had a rough time probably with my life if I had just continued doing what I was doing and not at least taken the shot.
And,
Absolutely.
And to add to that, I mean, again, like I was saying before, obviously there are a bunch of other circumstances that, you know, might need to align in some case. Like if there are major things in your life that are impacting, you know, like, you know, where you are in terms of finance and stuff like that. Obviously those are factors. Like you can't just pick up and leave. But I think what you're getting at and what I agree with is that if that isn't there, like if all that's really keeping you from it is you worrying about failing, like do it. Like just do it. It's going to, you know, and also I wanted to just say real quick, not that you guys think this or anybody would think this, I hope, but you know, it's not like, I mean, man, this job sucks sometimes, right? No, I shouldn't have said that, but it's, what I mean is that it's a job, you know, and you know, some days are really awesome and some days are like, woof, you know, that was a rough day. Yeah. And, you know, so it's kind of weird, you know, because on one hand, it's not, you know, like there's definitely, you know, some days are diamonds, some days are rocks, but the overall feeling is just one of, you know, I still have a good moment at least every day where I'm kind of there, and no matter what I'm doing, I stop and I look around and I go like, man, I made it. Like I'm here. I did it, you know, and I'm surrounded by people that at the drop of the hat, I could go, yo, man, what about that Genesis Mini lineup? And they go, yo, Streets of Rage 2 is on it. That's all I care about. You know, and so it's kind of, that's, you know, you got to think about how worth your weight in gold that is, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think even if you are in a situation where you may not necessarily be able to take your shot right now, just having that goal set is extra motivation to sort of plan out and put yourself in a position where you can eventually take the shot. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Yeah. That kind of shit just doesn't happen immediately.
Yeah.
Like it takes planning.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, you know, you could end up like Mike and be a successful part of the video game industry, or you could be like Paul and be a successful podcaster. Dreams do come true, guys.
It's true.
They all happen.
When Paul was telling me, yo, man,
still.
I'm going to quit and become a podcaster full time, I was like, I support you. I'm on my own odyssey.
I get you.
And then we fist bumped and everything exploded. Okay.
And then the inevitable divorce came.
Oh, but yeah, and again, shout out to Christy. Hi.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, it's time for the Genesis Mini.
Awesome. Sounds good.
All right, everyone, and we're back. And now the star of the show, the Genesis Mini. I know all of us are actually really hyped for this. I remember when I first heard about the Genesis Mini, I'm like, another mini console. You know, this is kind of played out by now. But, like, you see this lineup, and it's like, oh, man, I think I want this.
Yeah, I mean, it's, you know, the problem with Sega is that there have been Genesis Minis for years now. The problem is they've just licensed it to a terrible, you know, publisher, manufacturer, whatever you want to call them, scammers. And I'm referring to AtGames, who published the AtGames Sega Genesis, you know, little, you know, peripherals, you know, consoles.
Yeah, they've done like 4 or 5 of those now.
No, there were a bunch.
Oh,
and the problem was, I mean, they were cheap, and they had a bunch of games that you would have said, oh, that's great to have those games in there.
Yeah.
But it was probably some of the worst emulation jobs you could ever have. I mean, the Genesis Mega Drive, and I'm just going to start calling it Genesis Mega Drive because we're region free. But the Genesis Mega Drive is, you know, a very difficult console to emulate because of the Yamaha sound chip. Mm-hmm. That sound chip is very difficult to capture. And also the Genesis has a particular color palette that is very distinctive to it. And so when something's off, you could clearly notice. So when the color is off and the sound is off, you just play this and there's a dissonant feeling inside you as if there's something gravely wrong here. And that's basically the kind of dread that AtGame's Genesis consoles inspired.
Well said.
So, and so when I first saw this, I was like, yeah, it's gonna be another one of those shitty ones. But then I saw M2 is developing, and I'm like, now you have my attention. And then I kept seeing it, and then I was like, wait, Castlevania Bloodlines, now you have my money. It gradually earned its interest. It earned, its admiration, by showing that there was real dedication and effort being put behind it. I mean, the fact that they got Yuzo Koshiro to make the music for the menu should tell you everything about how much of a love letter this is going to be.
Yep. And I mean, to say like, number one, M2 were obviously responsible for much, if not all, of the ports for Sega Aegis, especially like the most recent ones. That stuff, there's so much love in those, and there's so much attention to detail that
they're the gold standard.
Yeah, there's that, and also I like that you brought up about how it was rolled out, because to me, having them roll out the lineup of 10 games at a time, I think that was brilliant. I mean, I know the other ones did too, in a sense. They were like, oh, we're just going to tease a few now and a few later, but with the Genesis Mini, it felt like clockwork. It felt like, okay, here's the first 10, and here's the next. And there was a real sense of build-up by the last 10, where I was like, what are they going to put? Like, what are they going to have?
Yeah, and they even announced the dates. And there was a real sense, for lack of a better word, of generosity. They were like, we're not going to release just 20, like that shitty system that came out a year ago. We're not going to, sell it at $99.99. We're going to put 40 games in there. And then when they announced the last, games on June 4th, they're like, oh, wait, there are going to be 42 games. We're actually going to throw in 2 more. So you're getting games that were never released here. You're getting games that have never been localized. It's honestly just an abundance of generosity from Sega. So,
it was, I kind of disagree with Mike, just because I was still a little bitten from the PlayStation one. Mm-hmm. When they didn't announce all the games at once, I was a little skeptical, because that's kind of what Sony did initially. They put out these games and they were like, look at all these cool games, and then they opened pre-orders immediately.
Right.
And then as they started rolling out the rest of it, you were like, oh, this isn't looking as great as I thought it was going to initially. But the difference with Sega is that, like, the thing I liked about Sega is every announcement had like a heavy hitter in it. It had something that people wanted in it. It wasn't just like, here's the first 10 games, they're all amazing, and then here's the other, Joe Montana quarterback or fucking
don't you dare say a bad word about that game.
Not a bad game, but like not something I would pay $80 to play.
By the way, let me mention that we're going to be talking about the games that we would add and the games that we would cut. So that's going to be your opportunity to shed on some of the games that maybe don't belong here.
Yeah.
So,
but no, with everything else, I do agree. Like they sort of structured it in a very nice way to always be like, here's an awesome game that you wanted every single time they announced more of the lineup. And, just the whole package is really impressive. The fact that it's 42 games, 2 controllers, like a nice sculpt of the system. M2's developing it. Yuzo Koshiro's working on it. Like they really want you to know that this isn't just like
the PlayStation Classic.
Like a cast-off project that they're working on. And I will say, in defense of PlayStation,
no,
we talked about this before. Like Sega doesn't have to deal with as much licensing shit as Sony did.
No, but when you look at the lineup, though,
yes,
some of these games are difficult. They're difficult. I mean, God, Castlevania Bloodlines had not been released up to this point.
Yeah, and I agree. Like PlayStation, I feel like what must have happened is they got the first batch of games and they were like, oh, this is great. Like, we'll definitely be able to get more. And then it became more difficult than they thought it would be. Like,
and they didn't want to put the budget or time into it.
Yeah, and people weren't just jumping at the chance to like be on this thing, and they were like, oh, now we gotta sort of scramble a little bit. Whereas Sega,
but that argument doesn't hold weight, Arnie, because the reality is that a lot of the games that we're missing had already come out on the PSN. They had already come out as PS classics.
Yeah,
so someone put in the effort before. Someone had done, those negotiations in the past. It's just, honestly, it was just like a throwaway, kind of cast off console. It was a project that no one in Sony looked like they were interested in doing.
But getting back to the Genesis, like, I agree. It looks awesome for like the price point and what you're getting. Like, I think it'd definitely be worth it.
So on that note,
that's
Arnie,
it. That's an episode.
On that note, Arnie, is there any game on this list that maybe you think people aren't too familiar with, and that they should play, or is there a particular favorite? Like, what's the first thing perhaps that you're going to load up?
See, here's the thing, and I'm glad you went with me first because I feel like mine is the most boring. Because of everybody here, I feel like I have...
That was the idea, Arnie.
I know. Thank you for recognizing that. It's like I have the least like first-hand experience with the Genesis. So I'm just excited for all the normie shit that people are excited for. Like, obviously, Bloodlines is amazing, and I want to play it. Hardcore is another big one, and if you've heard our Contra episode, you know how much I think we all want to play it.
You marry a monkey. That's all you need to hear.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I want. And then like the last ones, I mean, Gunstar Heroes I own, but I'm never not going to be excited for Gunstar Heroes. Like, that's one I would argue that that's probably the first one you should boot up when you get the system. Because
I would not disagree with that.
It's just,
I know, right?
It's just, Gunstar Heroes is such an experience. Like, I think a lot of people, and I don't know that this is necessarily true, but especially if you grew up with more like playing Nintendo consoles, maybe you're used to a little bit of a slower paced game. Like, a lot of people talk about Sonic being like the fast paced game on the Genesis, and I think I disagree. I think that Gunstar Heroes is just as fast paced and like even more pulse pounding than Sonic has ever been. So
I don't necessarily think fast paced. I think that it's much more busy.
Yeah,
yes.
I don't know.
I think it's just a technical powerhouse.
Whenever I play Gunstar Heroes, I'm always like, what's happening? Oh my god, everything's, like I lose it immediately.
Well, I mean, and I'm a little bit wary about speaking too much about Treasure because I know we want to do an episode about them, but they're just such an indelible part of gaming history. And with respect to the Sega Genesis, I mean, they were batting a pretty high average, besides Light Crusader, which is also on the list, unfortunately.
Yeah.
All the other games, were amazing, showcases of the Sega Genesis.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, Arnie. This is the first game you should try because if you wanted to see what the Genesis was about, Gunstar Heroes is the perfect representation. It has the perfect FM soundtrack composed by Non. It has that beautiful menu intro, with a kind of polygonal almost graphics. And then it just has so much crap going on.
Yeah.
If you wanted to see how much weirder the Genesis was compared to the Super Nintendo, Gunstar Heroes is that game.
Yeah. And then to round it out, like, maybe not some extremely obvious ones, but Monster World 4, super excited for.
Nice. Good pick.
Me too.
Monster World 4, super excited for. Mega Man Wily Wars, obviously, like, this is the first time we're getting it in some sort of physical, quote, air quotes, format outside of Europe and Japan. So that's going to be awesome. And then Darius. Darius is going to be awesome. And I don't think that one hasn't come to Genesis before. That was never released on the original.
No, it's a port.
No.
Yeah. So, I mean, those are the ones that I'm like, you got to play those.
What about you, Mike?
For me, like, Arnie already touched on most of them. Like, I completely agree in terms of if I had to pick one game, I don't know, it's actually, now that I think about it, it's a bit of a toss up. If I had to pick one to show somebody this is what the Genesis is all about, it would either be Gunstar, because it's just like you guys are saying, everything explodes. Like, you play it, it's the God of War taking out the Hydra on PS2 moment where it doesn't matter
Right.
it doesn't matter who you are. When you saw that for the first, it's the chainsaw bayonet in Gears of War. It doesn't matter who you are. The first time you saw it, you were like, "That's amazing." Yeah. And so it's kind of between that, but also my choice for it, Shinobi 3, I think would be the one I would point people to, because the sprite work is incredible. The level of polish is amazing. The music is fantastic. It just felt like, and also because I think, funny enough, Shinobi 3 came out late enough in its lifespan that I think a lot of people missed it.
I think so, and a lot of people remember Revenge of Shinobi.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say, is when I was on a forum when the final announcement was made, a lot of people were mad that they didn't put Revenge of Shinobi on there instead of Shinobi 3.
I can see that, but I think, to me, Shinobi 3, like, there's just no, I don't know. I like them both, but I think Shinobi 3 is a bit more user-friendly and is a bit more just fantastical. Like, there's just so much, I don't know. It's crazy.
Well, I don't know if fantastical. I don't know if fantastical, Mike, because Revenge of Shinobi did have Batman, Spider-Man, the Terminator, and Godzilla.
Yeah, but
at least
he was wearing. Oh no, wait, no, he wasn't wearing a black outfit. I'm thinking of the Master System one. Never mind. But Shinobi 3. I just to get my quick thoughts in on this. Gunstar is to run and gun what Shinobi 3 is to action games. It really is a showcase of kind of perfect, tight action that makes you feel like you're in complete control. It's easier than Revenge of Shinobi. Revenge of Shinobi was an early Genesis title. So it still has a lot of like the Nintendo hard qualities that we now tend to disagree with. Shinobi 3 is definitely beatable. Yep. And there are so many set pieces in that game that look so freaking amazing. The part with the horse, where you're riding the horse and there's the parallax scrolling in the back, and there's a kite and there are storms, and it's just a technical masterpiece, but not only from the technical side, but also from the art side. Yep. It's a perfect setup. And the music that plays when you're surfing, on the water, I played it to Paul in one of my posts on Instagram one time, and he's like, "I don't know what this is, but it's awesome." And you should probably play that song, Paul. I'll give you the name later on. But it's I think I've told the story before. My grandma once saw me playing it, and she was like, "That game is so beautiful." And it's my grandma. Yeah. So I think that this is one you want to show if you wanted to show off what the Genesis was capable of.
And the whole thing with like Revenge of Shinobi, I get it. Dude, I ride for Revenge of Shinobi, right? Like, I love that game.
One of the best soundtracks in the Genesis.
Oh my god, dude.
Yeah,
Revenge of first Shinobi. Level. Anyway.
Yeah.
But with that said, like, I can't disagree with having Shinobi 3 over Revenge of Shinobi on this system. And having both, I think, probably would have been a little bit too much Ninja. Yeah. A little bit too much Ninja. Yeah.
I don't agree. I think that what bothers me is the fact that there were other inferior games that were included, and I think that's probably what bothers other people. That they included Alex Kidd and Enchanted World, or
I knew there was an Alex Kidd dig coming.
In the Enchanted Castle, and not Revenge of Shinobi. I think that that's a real. It's a real gripe, but at the same time, I could understand why Sega, may have done it. They said, well, we already have one Ninja game. We don't need two. I don't agree with it, but I could see the logic.
So I think it's worthwhile as not good as Alex Kidd Enchanted Castle is. Alex Kidd was kind of like the early mascot, and I don't mind them taking up one of the 42 slots to kind of say, hey, remember this guy that Sonic obsoleted?
Yeah, but think about this, Paul. I mean, Revenge of Shinobi was included in Japan and the rest of Asia. Alex Kidd was only included in North America and not in Japan and the rest of Asia. It's like a perfect one-for-one swap.
Dude, I gotta stop talking. I'm saying these things out loud, and I'm like, dude, it's Revenge of Shinobi. Shut up. Like, stop standing for Alex Kidd. Like, forget it.
Look, Paul, I get you. Alex Kidd was, they really tried to make him a mascot. They really tried hard. But, for that, you have something like the Sega Genesis collection on the PS4, Switch, and Xbox, where it actually has like a museum and you can actually see kind of some of the history of it, etc. But for this is supposed to be a perfect microcosm of what made the system awesome. And there's no room for filler in that. Even if it's just for historical purposes.
I like that. No room for filler on this.
Well, that's how I felt about the SNES Classic. The SNES Classic, I don't think, had any filler. I mean, you could Google about Kirby's Dream Crash Course, but I think even Kirby's Dream Crash Course, or whatever the hell the name is, I think that was a good game. So there was absolutely no filler. Granted, there were only 20 games. Yeah. This one has 42. But, that's, you're trying to bundle a perfect, black matter mass of awesome into, one tiny console.
Yep.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't disagree with that viewpoint. I think that's very, very valid. And yeah, that SNES Classic, that was like a solid wall of awesome. Like no cracks in it, nothing. It was just like, bam.
Yeah, you could argue about Chrono Trigger not being there or whatever, but
that was the thing with the SNES Classic, is the only complaints were like, things
there
not
are more awesome
included.
Games.
Yeah. But you can't complain about anything that was on it. But anyhow, Shinobi 3, Ozzy, anything else you want to add as far as a game that you either should play or something you're going to play right off the bat?
Well, I'm going to say I have a strong desire to finally play through Phantasy Star 4. Now that I have played a significant amount of Phantasy Star 1, and we already had the episode, which, by the way, as you can hear in the episode, I was supposed to be on it, but unfortunately, life duties called.
Oh, man, regrets.
But Phantasy Star 4 being the sequel to Phantasy Star 1 in many ways, kind of taking the baton from Phantasy Star 1, from what I hear, it's kind of the perfect encapsulation of everything that made Phantasy Star awesome, and it was just like a love letter to the fans. Yep. And unfortunately, I was actually talking about Phantasy Star last night with a friend of mine. It came after Phantasy Star 3, which wasn't good, and disappointed many people, particularly when you have someone that just played Final Fantasy 4, /2 for the US. And, you have the annoying Sega kid in the classroom saying, "Oh, Final Fantasy sucks. You gotta play Phantasy Star." Which I'm pretty sure was Paul.
I was about to say that.
No, I was agnostic.
And then, you're like, okay, annoying kid, I'm gonna try Phantasy Star. And then you try Phantasy Star 3, and then it's Phantasy Star 3. And then you're like, I fucking hate that kid.
Well, you didn't follow his advice. He told you to play Phantasy Star, not Phantasy Star 3.
Well,
yes, I've never said that.
And so I imagine that, many people maybe did not get to experience Phantasy Star 4.
Yeah.
And it's good to have like a meaty RPG in this.
Yes.
I think it's really nice. I think it's the only RPG in this, is it?
I think so.
If I'm correct.
I mean, you can, I think, well, I guess I don't know. I started playing Beyond Oasis, and I was like, this is like action-y, but it also has like some light RPG elements.
No. It's like as RPG as Zelda.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's exactly the comparison.
Yeah. It's just a Zelda, kind of action, platformer, not platformer, action RPG. Yeah. Let's just call it that. But no, Phantasy Star 4, Reiko Koyama is on directing duties, etc. I mean, I just want to play it just to see if there's a boob dragon in there. So some segue from our prior episode. But yeah, I do want to get my hands on a meaty RPG like Phantasy Star 4. Yeah. In other God, I'm sounding like a lawyer. I said jurisdictions. In other countries, you got like Sword of Vermilion or something like that. I'm glad that we didn't get Sword of Vermilion, but it's interesting to see that there's only one RPG here. And the Genesis was not itself an RPG powerhouse, unfortunately. That really wasn't its strength. Its strength really lay in shoot 'em ups, and fast action, platformers. But if you're gonna go with one RPG, you go with Phantasy Star 4.
Can't disagree with that.
Yeah. Beyond that, Dynamite Heady, man. I mean, I feel like this is such an underrated game. Such a freaking underrated game. From the Treasure Aura, yes, like Crusader is not great. It has its redeeming quality. If I had to shop a treasure game from this, it would be like Crusader. But at the same time, Dynamite Heady, even within those 4 treasure games on the Genesis, it's still underrated. And it's a game that has such inventive platforming. It's kind of a game that just keeps throwing ideas at you, and you can clearly see the developers, being in a room and saying, well, we should do this. And then some other guy, that's fantastic. We should also do this. And then they just threw everything into it. It's kind of like the Gunstar Heroes, school of development. Because at this point in time, Treasure was just doing so many creative things. They were so pent up with creativity and ideas that they wanted to fulfill from working at Konami all that time, that literally they just had banger after banger. So Dynamite Heady for sure. And I guess one last one, just to not, take up too much, of the time. I would say, Vector Man. I know that this is not a very popular one. And it certainly wouldn't be my first choice, in terms of, the first one you should play. But, Arnie and Mike have already said a bunch of the first choices that I would already play. So I'm trying to go a little bit more obscure here. But Vector Man is an underrated game. It's a very, very solid game. And it's funny. It has charm. It has humor. But also, it's very impressive to see how advanced the graphics were for the time. It runs at a perfect 60 frames per second. And on such an old console, it's kind of weird to see. It did feel like they tapped into some sort of gravy inside the Genesis that no one knew about, and just made this hyper, advanced game that was just punching above its weight on the Genesis. And for my money, it looked better than Donkey Kong Country. It was at this time that, Sega and Nintendo were kind of going toe to toe on their games, and Donkey Kong Country hit the first salvo. And then Sega said, well, we're gonna take out Vector Man. Of course, Vector Man was never that popular, but I would say for my money, it looks a lot better. It has a lot better lighting effects. It just feels a lot smoother. So, if anything, just to see what developers were trying to do and what they could achieve with a console that was 2 years older than the Super Nintendo, I think you should check out Vector Man.
I agree with that. If they had put more money and development into more Vectormans instead of that fucking 32X, they would have had so much more goodwill in the end. But man, anyway, whatever. I'm not going to talk about the 32X now. That's actually another probably depressing episode. Very
depressing episode.
How to sink your company in one easy step.
Oh my god.
In many, many steps. 32X, Sega CD, Sega Saturn, Sonic.
I know, but the 32X
Extreme.
was really the big sin there. That was...
I agree. I think to a degree you can defend the Sega CD. The 32X is much harder sell.
Yeah, indefensible. Yeah. Anyway, just to wrap it up, my pick, the one, I'm excited to play it, and I think it's been kind of forgotten and perhaps, I don't know, lost to time. Dude, Road Rash 2.
Yeah.
I was going to mention that one. Yeah.
Yeah,
I owned it,
those
and
Road
I
Rash
loved
games. Yeah. Road Rash was a very, as far as I can remember, a fairly unique experience as far as racing games go, because you have that kind of have that feeling of speed, right? First of all. And that's always fun in a game where you're going fast and you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants. And you have the punching and the violence and all that. But honestly, that stuff is more like comedic value than gameplay depth. And I appreciate that. I think the brilliance of Road Rash is that you have this kind of very light, RPG element where you win money and you talk with the other bikers.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
And you upgrade your bikes and so on and so forth. And then the final ingredient in the secret sauce is when you start getting, at the end, the really fast bikes. And you have to complete these really long courses that can take 15, 20 minutes, right? And so what Road Rash managed to do is it managed to build this tension where you're having a perfect run. You're like 10 minutes in, you're like, oh man, I'm doing so well. I'm in second place. Like I'm almost in first. I can almost taste it. I can't hit a car. I can't hit a tree. I can't hit a car. I can't. And like the tension just builds and builds. And then 1 minute left in the race, you hit a car and you're like, no.
Exactly.
Very few games were able to do something like that. I love tension in my games, as you guys are well aware. And Road Rash really did well with building that kind
You
of
see,
thing.
that's exactly the reason why I don't play Road Rash. The tension is too much for my weak heart. But no, I never played the Genesis Road Rash games, and I imagine they play similar to the PS1 Road Rash games, at least the first one.
They do,
but
yeah.
I've always found it amazing that there were 3 Road Rash games on the Genesis.
Yep.
And I'm really excited to play Road Rash 2 because I want to see how different it is, on the Genesis. And you're right, Paul. There's a very 90s attitude, to Road Rash. It's kind of a perfect time capsule. I don't know if they have it in the Genesis, but at least in the PS1, when you put it on, you have Rusty Cage by Soundgarden popping up, and you have the really bad FMV, that at the time you thought it was cool, and still think it was cool. But then, like you mentioned, Paul, like you can go to a bar, and there you have all the bikers, and you can, kind of move up in the biker world. It's really kind of the cultural aspect of it is really interesting because it gives the game its identity. Something that racing games tend to generally be quite anodyne. They're not readily identifiable. They don't really have a character. Unlike something like Gran Turismo, where you kind of have the jazzy lounge music, etc. But you don't really have a character. With Road Rash, there is a character to it. So, in other, words, I'm really excited for Road Rash 2 as well.
Yeah. Cool, man. Well, let's take a quick break then after chatting about what we really liked.
Wait.
Oh,
Wait,
God.
Oh, God. Wait.
Actually, I was going to say wait too, but...
Yeah. So early, Paul. No, I'm really excited about Alicia Dragoon.
Nice.
It's not a game that I had in my mind at all, but I really am excited about a game that looks like a Boris Vallejo painting, in the vein of Golden Axe, and you play as a bikini-clad, I don't know, Viking-ish, gladiator-looking thing with a fucking dragon, her back, and she's shooting lightning out of her hands.
That game is actually good.
It is good.
It's one of the of the lesser-known gems on the system.
And done by Game Arts, who did the Grandia series. And I know Grandia has a lot of haters out there, also has a lot of lovers, but it's nice to see kind of where they first started, out with. And, as an action game, similar to, like if I was going after Shinobi, if I wanted to go for another action game, this is the one that I would try. Yeah. So, I'm really glad that it got, a nod here because it feels like a very obscure game that, was not supposed to be here.
Yeah. Me too, man. I remember when I saw it pop up on the list, it was, very slow, respectful nod. I was like, well done, Sega.
It's funny, yeah. I'm glad you brought it up, Arnie, because, sorry, Ozzy, I'm glad you brought it up because, Arnie never would have brought that up. But it's funny because, Paul, I had the exact, same kind of pause. Like, I was kind of looking at the list and I'm like, yep. And when I saw Alicia Dragoon, I was like, oh,
interesting.
I was kind of like, that's a deep cut. That's for the big fans. That's cool. And it's funny. I wanted to just give a shout out to Toe Jam and Earl. Because to me, Toe Jam and Earl is a game where it kind of, when you sort of look at some of its pieces, it has no right to still be as fun as it is. And you would think, and in some ways it is incredibly dated, but in other ways it's actually kind of strangely timeless. Like it's this weird, I can still play it with friends now, 2-player, the music is bumping, it's dope. Yeah. It has all these elements it has all these roguelike elements because, the levels are procedurally generated. And the kind of gameplay dynamic of getting the presents not knowing what they are, and that moment of opening it and going, what's going to happen? Because it could either be something good or bad. Like that whole game and the back and forth, it's so much fun. I still have so much fun playing it. And it's not that I didn't think they were going to have it there because it's a big enough title. I felt pretty confident it was going to be there, but I'm just glad it is. And I feel like I hope people give it a shot instead of just kind of going, oh, they put that on because the 90s, you know? And I'm like, actually, no, like it's really, it's legit. Like it's fun.
Well, I mean, the fact that there's a new ToeJam and Earl game out there produced by my colleague Hawken, a fun fact, you know, it kind of shows that people still have an appreciation for this series.
Yeah.
And it's pretty much like the same game. Like they did not change a lot.
2-player. I also that it's 2-player and it's co-op, and that's always a win in my books on one of these
Mike,
things.
Let me say, I'm not a ToeJam and Earl fan, and I was actually gonna shit on ToeJam and Earl in the next segment.
Totally can, man.
I'm gonna refrain from that now because I realize that I have a bit of a blind spot because I've never played a 2-player.
Oh.
And I imagine that if I had played ToeJam and Earl 2-player with like my little brother or something,
oh my God,
I would have many more fun memories of that game. So you have just talked me off the ledge of shitting on ToeJam and Earl. So thank you, Mike. We get to keep a few of our listeners. Yep. So good for us.
I'm gonna add one more thing to ToeJam and Earl before we take a break. Assuming we can take a break, Ozzy, is that cool?
wait.
But I'll add one more thing to ToeJam and Earl. When I see ToeJam and Earl, I see a Sega Genesis title. It is a very Genesis title. It's doing weird shit that we haven't seen before, and it's colorful and fun and funky. And I think when you're looking at Sega Genesis in a nutshell, you know, obviously you're seeing Sonic, and obviously you're seeing Gunstar Heroes, but you're also seeing all that weird stuff like ToeJam and Earl. And you're seeing stuff that you'd never see on the SNES. We mentioned during the Technosoft episode, Technocop, which I know Mike is also a big fan.
Classic. I have it.
Like, again, terrible game, but
terrible.
You would only ever see something like that on the Genesis. And the fact that the Genesis was doing all this kind of weird shit, I think that ToeJam and Earl is like the essence of that, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. I can't believe you guys just talked me into ToeJam and Earl.
It's so good.
I'm very surprised right now.
I'm telling you, it has no right to be still as fun as it is. Like, I play it and I'm like, I don't...
None.
It's amazing.
Have made me nostalgic for a game that I was about to just shit on. Like,
ToeJam and Earl is just as 90s as those terrible Road Rash FMVs that you love so much.
Oh, yeah.
No, listen, at least it's not CNC Music Factory on the Sega CD. Or Marky Mark, you know, Maker Video.
I would play those now. Believe me, I would love.
I have it. You want to come by?
Value.
Come over. We'll do a let's play. We'll do a let's play.
Yeah, man. Shit, I wish I'd known that last time I was there, or maybe you didn't have it back then. But
I did.
Missed opportunity.
All
right, guys, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll find out what other game Ozzy's gonna shit on. All right, everyone, and we're back. And as promised, Ozzy, what I want from you, 3 games that you would remove, 3 games that you would add in their place. I want to hear you crap on some games here.
Well, I mean, I'm not gonna, you know.
Too late. It's not a jukebox,
You're
right?
You're totally gonna do it.
You can't just.
I don't have any option anymore. I don't have any option anymore. No, I mean, the way that I think about this, I mean, there are some games here that there isn't a lot of filler here in the Sega Genesis collection, and I wouldn't even call it filler. I would just say that they're games that just, you know, have either A, not aged well, or B, compared to the other games that are out there that are so terrific, you know, they just kind of pale in comparison. But what I kind of wanted to do was just kind of like take a like for like exchange with respect to this. And so the first game that I would take out is Echo the Dolphin.
Sorry, development.
Listen, it was a 50-50 shot. It was either Alex Kidd or Echo the Dolphin, but I decided to give Alex Kidd a break.
Nice.
I would totally remove Alex Kidd under any circumstances, but let's just talk about Echo the Dolphin now. Echo the Dolphin pisses me off. I'm just gonna put it out there. Maybe it doesn't piss off other people. It pisses me off. It makes me nervous. It gives me anxiety, and the gameplay I think is crap. I don't know if it's so weird. It's such a fucking weird game. It's a game about dolphins that telepathically talk to each other. And there's so much more that they could have done with that concept. You know, what if they had like different types of dolphins? What classes of dolphins or something like that? What if some of the dolphins had lasers on their head? Something more interesting than just you going through like little tunnels and using your beak in order to get through it and, you know, having, you know, the just scraping time, you know, ticking against you because you're about to die. I don't know. It's just not
Echo
to
the
me.
Dolphin, the way you're describing it, Echo the Dolphin feels like if there was a Sonic game where you're always underwater and you're always listening to that song speeding up.
Whoa.
Exactly.
about
And
to
why
drown.
would you want to
Arnie,
play
that's
that shit?
brilliant.
And why would you want to play that? Those are literally the most stress-inducing parts of Sonic. So, yeah, I don't know what Sega's fascination with Echo the Dolphin was. And, you know, I feel a little bit vindicated about my opinion of Echo because the developers eventually did, you know, Contra, the Sea Adventure on the PS1. So, you know, were they ever any good? Who knows? So I would take out Echo the Dolphin.
Yeah.
So that's it for, you know, my, diatribe and vitriol. So
Well done.
I
Well
would
done.
add,
Thank you. Thoroughly
and-
enjoyed it, by the way.
and by the way, I'm not talking about here. I'm talking in an ideal world. There are no licensing issues. Everything is perfect. You know, everything is hunky dory. I would add the Adventures of Batman and Robin.
Good pick.
Because that's a very, very underrated game.
Yep.
Even within its own series. Because the beautiful thing about the Sega Genesis, 16-bit era was that you could get a completely different game depending upon which console you chose. And so The Adventures of Batman and Robin was actually not developed by Konami, which was the developer for the Super Nintendo version. And the Super Nintendo version was more of like your traditional beat 'em up. Now, this one was also a beat 'em up, but it just had a different feel to it. Hard as hell, but had some of the most advanced graphics that you could see on the Genesis, similar to Vector Man, in the sense that they were really pushing what they could do with the Genesis hardware. But I think if there's one reason why you should play it, just one reason, is because I think this game has the top 3 soundtracks on the Genesis. And it's actually done by none other than Jesper Kyd, who eventually went on to do the Hitman series, the Assassin's Creed series, just one of the greatest composers. He's Danish, I believe. And this was one of the very early games that he worked on. And it has a very industrial kind of techno, dark, ambient music soundtrack. It doesn't feel like Batman at all in any way. Like when you think Batman, you think, Danny Elfman, you know, his soundtrack from the Tim Burton movies.
Yeah.
Da-na-na-na-na. You know, this doesn't feel at all like that. It's like if you were going to a club in Budapest, you know, in 1996, taken by Russians, you know, and then everyone is just like with their faces painted red and raving, and everyone's on acid. That's kind of like what this music sounds like. And
It's
if
like
you
I'm
haven't
there.
heard it, yeah. So you should try this game just for that simple freaking reason.
Yeah. Fun fact. One of the few Genesis games that Arnie did own as a kid.
Arnie,
Oh, wow.
you've redeemed yourself. You have redeemed yourself.
I know it was. If you looked at my Genesis library, you would think that I was like a psychopath or something. It was Adventures of Batman and Robin, Road Rash 2, Mighty Max, and like The Lion King or something like that. Like there was no consistency across the board.
Wait, Mighty Max was the one with like that was the pocket poly for
Yep.
that was the quote unquote pocket poly for
Yep.
boys.
It was based on
Yep.
it was based on the cartoon. And that game was I want to say it was terrible because I remember it being
You
terrible,
love it, Arnie.
but I was
No.
also a dumb kid, so maybe I just didn't know what to do, but that game was bad.
All right. Well, that explains a lot about Arnie. That tells me a lot about you and the life decisions you made. But going on to the next one, I'm actually gonna drop, and it hurts me to say this because there are other games that I would rather drop. But in my weird rubric of how I'm doing this, it has to be kind of like a like for like exchange. And so I'm gonna replace Space Harrier 2. I love Space Harrier. I think Space Harrier
so
was
sad.
it's such a seminal game. Yu Suzuki did such a fantastic work on that game, and it was so advanced for its age. But the reality is that Space Harrier 2 was a launch, release for the Genesis. And because of that, it's not necessarily a technical showcase of the system, and not even the best port of the Space Harrier, formula. It's still good. I think that it's still a decent game, but it just doesn't, cut it, in this lineup, at least going by what I'm doing. And I would replace it with a game that is severely underrated. I kind of never hear about it, but I played it yesterday, and as I was playing it, I was like, this is everything I've ever wanted. And that's Ranger X.
Nice. Good pick.
And Ranger X, like, even to gamers, I don't think they've really played. But you play as a robot, and this is the Ranger. This is Ranger X. And you have
I'm interested.
You have, think about it as Cybernator. Did you ever play Cybernator on the Super Nintendo?
Yeah.
Where you're commanding a bot, and you can either go forward or go backwards. So you have the ABC buttons on the Genesis. So A, is back. So you shoot back. C, you shoot forward. And B is your special attack. And it allows you to fly up or down, through thrusters that you have. But right next to you is this little thing, that follows you around, kind of like a hoverboard that follows you around. And as it follows you around, it's kind of shooting and helping you and assisting you. And the moment that I realized that I could get on that and ride it like a hoverboard, I was just blown away. But the moment I realized I could not only ride it as a hoverboard, but if I press down, it would convert into like, an ATV type thing, like an all-terrain type vehicle. I was like, this is awesome, because there's so much versatility in how you can play.
Yeah.
Like, it just gives you like a plethora of flexibility in how you can play, and it just makes you feel so damn cool. There's so many explosions, so much parallax scrolling, things happening in the background that, you're never going to get to. It's just happening, like cities being bombarded and stuff. And I was just blown away by, how crazy good this game was and how intuitive it felt to control that. I didn't even look at a manual or anything. I just kind of started fiddling around with it, and I was like, oh my God, you can get on this hoverboard, and oh my God, you can turn into this fucking ATV. I don't know, man. I was like a kid for a second, or like several seconds.
You're
going to say, I was just
kind
going
of
to
the
say
point of these systems.
That game is bananas. And what I like that you brought up, not just that the sort of interesting control scheme, which, takes a little bit to get used to, but like you're saying, fairly intuitive after a little bit. But I'm really glad you brought up the parallax scrolling and the cities being bombarded, because what I love about that game is that it's one of those games where every level you're doing something a little different. And the first stage, and it's and it's funny because I kind of wonder about this, and Ozzy, I'd love to get your take, because I wonder sometimes if the first stage, it's one of those games that because it had that variety, it might have turned off some people. And what I mean by that is that the first stage in that game plays a lot like, I guess I'll say Fantasy Zone. It's the only one I can think of. There's basically these missile launchers that are firing missiles in real time at this city in the background. And when you take them out, they stop shooting missiles, and the level ends when you've destroyed all of them. It's a very specific kind of way to make a game. And sometimes I wonder, did a bunch of people play it, not beat the first stage because the game can be hard, and just go, oh, is this the whole game? Like, am I just going to do this? And I feel like I wonder about that, because I think as a stage on its own, and then moving, and then when you get to the next stage, it's different, and the next stage is different, you go, oh my God, Ranger X has so much to offer. This is awesome. But if you take it at face value that, oh, this is the whole game, because at the time, people didn't mix it up that much. I don't know. I wonder about that. Like, I kind of
Yeah, no, I am with you, and I think the first stage, the purpose of the first stage, because it's a very horizontal level. It's not flat because it has a lot of inclines and declines, but it's very horizontal. And I think the reason is because they want you to come to grips with the control mechanics.
Absolutely.
And they want you to kind of see how the hoverboard kind of interacts. Which I failed to mention that the hoverboard, once you're, as an ATV, it actually has a homing capability. So that allows to assist you. So even though you can't really control where you shoot, it has a homing capability. So I think the first level is good with respect to that, but I can definitely agree with you, Mike, that it's possible some people saw this and they said, well, I've already played games like this before, even though the whole, transforming and all that is cool. But then the second level is just a cave, and the cave has like all these connecting systems, and you have to be really strategic about it because there are so many hazards, etc. And it's kind of really complex. It's a very, interconnected weave of cave passages, etc. And it's very interesting. It's hard. It's a hard game. So I could definitely see people being turned off by it. But possibly, I just think that at the time, maybe, these games just did not have the advertising necessary in order to really become more popular.
Yeah. So let's get one more going here.
Okay, so just one more. I would take out Kid Chameleon because fuck that game. I don't know why they keep releasing this game. Out. Yeah, I don't know why they keep releasing this game. Like, Sega, what the fuck? Like, stop this shit. No one likes Kid Chameleon. No one liked Kid Chameleon. I would take Alex Kidd over Kid Chameleon any time of the day.
Wow.
No, being serious now, Kid Chameleon, it has some redeeming qualities. The idea of transforming into different things, into like a samurai, into a robot or whatever. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's not a good game in terms of control mechanics and level design, etc. So I would definitely say that this one's one that's, very overrated in the eyes of whoever has been selecting Sega's titles. And instead of that, I'm going to keep it simple because I don't know much about this game except the fact that I want to play it. And I would add Shiki Shiki Boys.
Hey, nice.
Yeah, because it's developed by Capcom. They were firing on all cylinders at the time. It has very, very colorful platforming. And so it's a perfect like-for-like exchange with Kid Chameleon because, rather than this droll 90s attitude-looking crap, why don't you have like really cool, colorful anime, kids, with swords, etc., doing platforming. Yeah. And just because I want to see that name, Shiki Shiki Boys.
Fun fact, this is a game that Adult Arnie owns now.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
And I actually really enjoyed it. I would agree with you. I think it would make a nice addition. It's just like there's nothing. It's one of those games where like I haven't played enough of it to say this for certain, but it doesn't really do anything like groundbreaking or like amazing. But it's overall just a solid experience.
Yeah. So yeah, that would be it. By the way, Shiki Shiki Boys, if you want to play it, it was released as Mega Twins on the Capcom Classics Collection Volume 2 on PS2. In case that you don't want to dig out and try to find a Genesis cartridge like Arnie did. But yeah, those are my picks. Just a few things that I wanted to mention. I didn't talk about games that I would have preferred, to have on there, like Golden Axe 2. Thunder Force 4, I'm not even going to talk about it because we've already done enough about Thunder Force 4.
There is no Thunder Force 4. It's called Lightning Force.
But Shining Force 2, I would have liked to have seen Shining Force 2, and it's kind of sad that it was included, in the other locations, but it wasn't included in NA. But Shining Force 2, it's kind of perfect, it's perfect to go along with Shining Force 1. And I guess it's another RPG, but it's a strategy RPG. Yeah. But Shining Force 1 is great. I also recommend it strongly. But in any case, those are my picks.
Cool, man. I agree with you on Kid Chameleon. I didn't cut Kid Chameleon myself, but I think that's because there are people out there who really like it. I don't know who they are, but I just get this, just based on the fact that we see it a lot, I feel like it was popular. But yeah, I agree with you, man. Like, as a game, not so great.
Yeah, it's a good concept. It's an interesting concept. And I remember when I first saw it, I was like, oh, this is really cool. You can transform into different things. But then you start playing it and you're like, why am I so bored? And why am I not having any fun with this? So yeah, I think that's
the Kid Chameleon experience in a nutshell.
Pretty much.
Yeah, sadly.
So try it for yourself when you get it.
So Mike, why don't you give us 3?
Sure. So I only have one pick where it's kind of like Ozzy did, where it's sort of associated, where it's kind of one for one. The others is just, I hate this one, I want this one instead. So okay. I'll start with the one that is kind of related. I would absolutely remove Virtua Fighter 2. Like, it's
I'm with you.
It's garbage.
Totally with you.
It's like, no disrespect to obviously the people that made it. Is it a technical achievement? Sure. Does it play like hot garbage? Yes. And it's very late in the lifespan. It's not showing off in a good way what the hardware was capable of. Nobody asked for it. Nobody wants it. I don't know why it's on there. So there's that. Now, what I would one for one replace it with, because we're talking about something that's more of a technical achievement, I would choose a game that was never localized for here. So I'm going a little deep. It's called Star Cruiser.
Star
Cruiser. So Star Cruiser is a role-playing first-person shooter video game. That was made in Japan. We talked about Star Cruiser
on the Technosoft episode.
In the Technosoft episode, yeah.
So I would absolutely want Star Cruiser. I've watched video of Star Cruiser, and I'm like, oh my god, I would explode. Like, if I had been a kid and this would have come out, I would have just exploded. Like, that would have been it. There's first person.
And it was ported to the Genesis?
Yes, yeah. It was on the Mega Drive. There was first person elements, full 3D environments. I mean, obviously very limited, but, had character portraits, visual novel style, like other JRPGs while they were talking. It was basically Phantasy Star 2, except in space, mixed with like Elite Dangerous. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes. Like, I want it right now. Like, it's also because of the technical achievement, like seeing some of this stuff. I mean, we got some of it late in the Genesis lifespan when you look at stuff like Red Zone, where the developers were doing just crazy stuff, like really, like full 3D things, like really smooth. Mm-hmm. But Star Cruiser was relatively early and doing all this, and it blows my mind. I don't know why it didn't come out. Like, I just don't, because if they had done the work and it had been ported and come over to North America, like, it would have sold. Like, people would have bought
this. I think, Mike, I think that at this time, the North American powers that be were still wondering, can RPGs, really succeed here? Mm-hmm. And when you look at something like Star Cruiser, it looks really hardcore. Like, it looks like something that comes out on the PCs, which it did in Japan. But, with respect to a console, they're going to say this is a little bit too hardcore for kids. Kids are not going to get this. So
that's fair.
We're not going to go through the trouble of doing this. I mean, in hindsight, we would have loved it, and maybe we would have converted a bunch of people, but I can't necessarily disagree that it would have probably sold very poorly. I have to think that they probably made the right move. If they were going to, like,
hope springs eternal.
Yeah. I mean, from a business perspective, from a fan perspective, I wish they would have. But from a business perspective, they probably made the right move.
Well, I mean, we did get Kid Chameleon, right? So
everything is saved.
So that's the first one. The other two are not sort of related. They're just kind of the ones that I'm excited about or not excited about, conversely. World of Illusion, like, get that out of here, man. Get World of Illusion out of here. Are you kidding me? Seriously? We got Castle.
Really?
Mickey.
Yeah, man. We got Castle of Illusion. We got everything we need. Like, that game's good. It's fun. It's a classic. I think it might have even been a launch title. I don't remember.
No,
why do we
but
need?
it's a classic.
I don't need Donald and Mickey waving capes, at flowers. Like,
hard disagree.
I'm just,
Yeah, I disagree with this, Mike.
That's cool.
Mike,
That's cool.
I wholeheartedly agree.
Is there can I hang up on you?
Yeah.
Is there an option?
And
You agree, Paul?
Oh yeah, I agree, dude. I couldn't agree more. It's spoiler alert. It's one of my cuts too.
yeah.
Come on.
No, but let me say, Paul. I mean, I am with you guys in the sense that we couldn't get 2 Shinobi games, but shit, we got 2 Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck games.
Thank you.
Like, what the fuck, guys?
Yeah, and that's the logic. That's the logic right there. Anyhow, Mike, what would you replace it with?
I would replace, and again, these aren't related. I would replace it with, and I know there's licensing issues, like Ozzy was saying, like, Perfect World. Shadowrun. I would absolutely have Shadowrun.
Oh, of course.
Deep
Oh,
cut. Deep
Forgot
cut.
about
Yeah.
that one.
Because, like you guys were already saying, there's kind of a dearth of RPGs on
yeah.
Genesis to begin with, and on the Mini as well. And I think not only that, it offers a very different kind of RPG experience than Phantasy Star 4.
Absolutely.
And so to me it's a no-brainer. It's also because I love the game to pieces and I played it like crazy. But yeah, it almost feels like cheating me saying Shadowrun, because I'm like, oh man, anybody who knows me it's so obvious. But but it does fit. Like, I think it's a good fit. I think it would actually
But
be
also,
like a good fit for it.
Also, Mike, I mean, Cyberpunk is in, man.
Yeah.
I mean, Cyberpunk, is still a thing. And I think that a lot of people, like, if they played this game, they would really be into it. I think it's a game that actually has aged well. Maybe not in terms of its, like, tone, etc., but even its tone, it's kind of like going back to, Hackers from 1995, the movie. It's like, it's very off its time, but it still feels like awesome.
And to say,
like, you have to get by the visuals, because the visuals are not great.
No,
but
the
game itself it's a very unique experience.
Yeah. It's a PC-like experience in a console, which is something that the Genesis did very well. So yeah, I'm totally with you there, Mike.
And for context, if people haven't seen the game, I mean, I can't really give much context on Star Cruiser because I haven't played it. But for Shadowrun, we're really like the guys are saying, we're really talking about more of a Western open-ended RPG experience. Like, the game starts, it gives you a couple paragraphs of text, and then you just go. Like, it's just like, all right, figure it out. And you have a couple.
Well, I've only played the Super Nintendo one, Mike. I've only played the Super Nintendo one, but if I recall correctly, the versions were different.
Oh, very different.
Yeah, they were very different, because I remember the Super Nintendo one, you wake up in like a morgue, or something along those lines. I don't know if that's the same that happens in the Genesis one.
No, the Super Nintendo one is more like a point and click. It's also great, also fantastic. But the Genesis one, I mean, it really is open-ended in the sense that, you're walking around this small kind of city. People might attack you. They might not. As you're walking around. You do runs, which are basically mini, like, little side quests. You do those to get experience, to build up your skills, to go after, like, the big corporations. And, I'm going to stop there because there's so many gameplay systems we could talk about, like the Matrix. Hacking into the Matrix is so cool, like cyberspace in that game. But yeah, it's just got a lot of stuff in it.
Yeah, we should probably do a Cyberpunk episode at some point, and we will. It would be great to have you there.
Thanks.
Because Shadowrun would be such a great, part of the conversation.
Yeah. And so the third one, third one's Kid Chameleon. Shouldn't, like, it's just, it is funny. It's like, I don't hate it, but to me, and I understand that maybe some people have an attachment to it, but to me, Kid Chameleon reminds me, and this is getting a little too personal, not in the sense I'm going to tell you some dark secret, but in the sense that it's very biased. Like, Kid Chameleon, the way the movement works in Kid Chameleon, depending on the mask that you're wearing sometimes, albeit, it's all momentum, right? Like, it's all like, you got to build a ton of momentum. It's really hard to stop. Like, when you jump, it's really hard to course correct, all that stuff. And at least that's what I remember. And it reminds me of stuff like Decap Attack, but most specifically, it reminds me of Psycho Fox, and I fucking hate Psycho Fox. And so I don't want it. I don't understand why anybody would like gameplay like that. I'm out. But
yeah, and the inertia is kind of
yes.
off. I think that was kind of like the first thing that I was like, oh no, I'm not into this. Yeah. It's just something about the movement is off. Yeah. You know, even Mario, which has a little bit of slippage, it still feels like you're in control. With this, you just kind of feel like you always have to be minding the inertia, and it's always in the back of your head, and it gets in the way of your enjoyment of the game.
Yeah.
So and you said, you know, I don't hate it. This game, it's almost like you want to hate it for how bland it is.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you want to hate it more. And so you get like a guttural, visceral reaction when you see this game because it's like, I want to hate you. No. You know, should not be here. You don't deserve it. So I'm glad that
I mean, it doesn't
else.
help that it's like a kid in a leather jacket and sunglasses and cool hair. Like
it does feel like that Simpsons, you know, character, the dog, the cool dog.
Poochie.
You know? Poochie.
It's the Poochie of the Genesis.
Yeah, he really is.
Oh man, I wish I could send it off into space and never see it again.
Yeah. And also, I remember it being one of those games that was like the big selling point to that game, if you guys will remember, is that it's really long.
Oh yeah,
it's like,
doesn't it have like 100 stages or something?
There's so many stages. Oh, is there a password or a save system? No. And it's like, oh. So I go through a bunch of samey stages and I have to do it all in one shot. Yep. Oh. Okay.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
I'm all over it.
Good idea, terrible execution.
You would replace it with?
I'm gonna cheat a little bit. I would replace it with any renovation title that has an anime intro. Okay?
That is too much cheating. No.
We don't have any.
I fully support this.
We need one. Okay,
pick.
so I have some honorable mentions. First of all, Valis 3. Okay? Valis 3, its intro is like 10 minutes long. It's incredible. And it's just like 10 minutes, and I'm like, what? Why is it so long? This is amazing. I'm gonna say it wrong. I always said it Gaiares.
Yeah, dude,
has no right to have a story as deep as it does, but it does. It's got
it's insane.
Dude,
absolutely nuts.
And Zero Wing.
Elemental Master, man.
Why can't we have Zero Wing on it? Like, just so people can see, like, this is where it came from. All the memes. This is this is what people love. But yeah, so I know it's cheating a little bit. So if I gotta pick one, I'd actually probably pick Arcus Odyssey. Which was a renovation title because it's a really fun game. It's really good. And, again, like literally for the cutscene, just to show people how, like, even then, cause I never saw that on Super Nintendo. I never saw sort of the tricks that they were pulling, like, especially Telnet and renovation. Like, there's this scene in the intro of Arcus Odyssey where they play with the parallax scrolling somehow, and they do this kind of pseudo 3D effect where it sort of swoops down and frames both characters in this magical duel, and they fire at each other, and it causes this big spark and explosion. And when I was a kid, I saw that, and I was literally like, it's the future. We did it. Like, I'm living in the future. Like, I've never seen something that looks that cool in my life.
Which, Mike, it reminds me, I mean, it's just, the Super Nintendo was an RPG powerhouse. Yeah. There's no doubt about that. But the Genesis has so much variety. I know Paul mentioned this, you know, on the last episode, but it just had so much variety, so many different types of games that you keep going through this, and I'm just like, man, I want to play that so bad. You know, whereas the Super Nintendo, I feel like a little bit more daunted even because a lot of them are RPGs, and I know that if I want to play them, I'm going to have to dedicate a substantial amount of time. But with the Genesis, I could just pop and play it and be like, this is awesome. And that's it.
Yep.
And that makes it a very different experience from the Super Nintendo.
And yeah, and shout out Game Ground.
Game Ground. I was thinking about it. I was thinking, but it doesn't have an anime intro, so
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Anyhow, sorry to cut you off there, Mike, but
No, go for it.
I really want to hear Arnie's games.
Do you really?
I'm trying to be polite, dude. Just hear me.
I want to hear him, Arnie. Hit us.
So so Ozzy inadvertently did something that sort of changed the trajectory of where my conversation was going, because I was going to cut Kid Chameleon and Echo. And I have two alternates, but I think the two alternates are going to be controversial, so I'm very happy about that. My mentality was sort of a little bit different. In my mind, I was just like, I want to cut games that I have no interest in, even if they might not objectively be worse than some of the other games on the system.
You're gonna cut Tetris.
I just want to cut games that I have no interest in, and I wanted to add games that, one, I hadn't played, and two, were expensive, because I feel like those are the games that I'm probably never going to be able to play any other way. So my list is a little wonky, but first thing I want to cut is Eternal Champions. I just have no interest in playing Eternal Champions.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure
it's not a bad game though.
No,
it's not a bad game.
I'm sure it's fine. I just have no interest in playing it. Like, it's not a thing. Like, if I bought this, I'd probably never boot it up.
You know, it's kind of like an alternative to, what would have been another form of Mortal Kombat. It was really riding off of Mortal Kombat, but it was more colorful. It didn't have those ridiculously bad digitized graphics that Mortal Kombat and Pit Fighter had.
Yeah.
It was actually, of the Mortal Kombat clones, I would say it's probably number one or number two.
Yeah.
Number one.
I've
but
never
it's
heard
still,
bad things about it, but fighting game, just like immediately I'm like, no, go away, please.
No, but also there's another element of that. It's one of the few, 2D fighting games that Sega did. Because they were known for Virtua Fighter, but they didn't really have, at least to my recollection, many 2D fighting games. And this was a pure Sega, developed fighting game.
Yeah.
No, I agree. Those are all good points, but Arnie, don't let him talk you out of it.
No. I have
Cut
no
that
interest.
game.
Really?
So Eternal Champions goes out, and then when I was picking the game I'd replace it with, I feel like I want to play to the Genesis's strengths, and there is variety in the library, but there's undoubtedly certain genres that the Genesis just did better than the Super Nintendo. And I think chief among those was shoot 'em ups, and that's why my first pick is Truxton. I really want to play Truxton. Truxton has been one that I've always wanted to play. It's stupid expensive, stupid hard to find. So I would have loved if it would have been on here, as another shooter.
I love how similar we are, because Truxton was one of my backups if someone else brought it up.
Yeah, Truxton.
So I'm definitely with you on that.
I feel like the number one pick in that situation for most people is Musha, but Truxton is more interesting to me. Just in the way that it's set up, and also the artwork I think is much cooler than most of the other shmups on the Genesis. So Truxton is the pick for me.
And I can tell you, I actually do have it. Really, it's a really good game. Obviously, it's an early gen game. Like, you can tell from looking at it that it's early gen, but it does a lot of things. It's made by Toaplan. They're one of the legendary shoot 'em up developers, and you can really see how it kind of, sets the table for a lot of the other stuff that they'd end up doing. Like Hellfire, like as Mike mentioned, Zero Wing. Truxton, like I said, really just kind of sets the table there. Grindstormer is another one on the Genesis that we don't hear anything about other than about how expensive it is, but Grindstormer is awesome too.
Yeah.
This is all, all these Toaplan games are great.
Yeah, and like I said, this is a game that I probably won't be able to play, in any official form any other way than to get it on one of these collections. So Truxton was big on my list. So now we're going to get into the more controversial picks. Ooh. So do you want the more controversial one first? Spicy. Or the least? Okay.
No, we saved the most controversial for the end.
Okay.
For sure.
So in my opinion, the lesser one of these is I would take out Sonic Spinball. Again, I have no interest in Sonic Spinball. I'm sure it's a fine game. I'm sure it's fine. But I don't care. Yeah, that's fair. I really don't. Probably
if I was putting together, sorry Arnie, but if I was putting together the marketing material for Sonic Spinball, like the little thing they put on the back of the box, like quote from a magazine, it would be Arnaldo, I think it's fine.
See, here's the thing is like my version of the Genesis Mini would be a marketing disaster. Like nobody would buy this thing if I picked the games for it. But just going along with that, take out Sonic Spinball, Crusader of Senti. Crusader of Senti
is, of course,
huge RPG. Again, like Truxton, stupidly expensive, stupidly hard to find. Published by Atlas, so automatically, like, I have to play it. I have to know what it is. And it just looks really like a solid RPG. I know the Genesis RPGs weren't the thing that the Genesis was known for, but it did enough of them in like. And they were usually, like, very unique. Like, they usually had something that made them sort of stand out in the sea of, like, more arcadey type games that were, like, the bulk of the Genesis library. So Crusader of Senti is one that I just have to play.
Cool, man. I don't disagree at all. And Crusader of Senti is, like... I mean, when we're talking about stupid expensive, Crusader of Senti is fucking... It's next level. Like, Truxton, not cheap. Crusader of Senti... No fucking way I'm ever getting
It's
that.
also a game
Crusader of Senti is up there with Musha, I think, in terms of pricing.
Yeah. Probably more expensive even than Musha.
It might be.
It's also a title that I don't think many people have played at all.
Or have even heard about.
It's a good call.
I mean, and that's the appeal to me. Like, for me, it was really like, have I played this before and how expensive is it? Because, and that might sound, I feel like it sounds like really shallow when I say it out loud like that, but the combination of those two factors is what appeals to me. Like, I'd rather have a new experience over something I've already played, and I'd rather play something that I will most likely never be able to play in any other form because of how expensive it is to get.
Absolutely.
So that's how
makes
sort
perfect
of
sense to me.
constructed this. And so now, okay, so I'm going to have to give a little explanation for this, but
oh, this is not going to be good.
Can't wait.
If I had to remove any other games personally, it'd be Sonic and Sonic 2.
Oh my god.
I don't care.
Oh my Lord.
I've been there, I've done that. I do not care. Like, I would rather
at least it wasn't
World
Streets of Rage
Illusion.
2.
Yeah. Oh, no. That, because Streets of Rage 2, one, I have not played it as much as I've played Sonic. And two, I think Streets of Rage 2 is just infinitely more entertaining. Like, I feel like you get a lot more value out of Streets of Rage 2 than you get out of Sonic, personally.
So tell me about why you're going to hell and you're removing Sonic.
So here's my thing. You put Sonic in there. You put Sonic 2. Like, I'm sorry. Sonic 3 and Knuckles. That is the game that should have been in there.
Disagree. Disagree.
Arnie, do you know that you're completely wrong? Do you even realize how wrong you are right now?
That has always been my
because
favorite
I think we need to give.
That has always been my favorite Sonic game. It's the first one I played. It's always been my favorite. And it's been done to death.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, here's the thing.
I never want to play another Sonic game again.
Here's the thing.
Like, of these.
Like, Arnie, I actually, I literally wrote down a column called Hot Takes, where I would like throw out something where I go, you know what, I actually think, and to me, Sonic 1, I agree. Like, I don't need it there. Like, I think Sonic 2 is the best Sonic game, and that should be there. And that makes sense to me. But Sonic 1, it's like, I don't know, man. I mean,
no.
Like, I don't think we need it. You know, it's slower Sonic 2.
They can both go.
Like,
they can both go.
No, they can't.
And in their place, I actually picked another duology on the Genesis that I think would be an amazing replacement. And Splatterhouse 2 and 3.
Nice.
I think that there should be at least one Splatterhouse game on this console because I think, one, there's no other horror game on here, and two, they're just awesome. Like, I feel like more people need to play Splatterhouse. I think of the two, I think I'd lean towards picking 2 over 3 if I had to choose, but I don't think you could go wrong with either game on the system.
Arnie, do you know that your version would be an economic catastrophe?
Yeah, I told you that. Like my Sega Genesis
I'm so
Mini
glad
would
that you're
sell,
not
like-
in the game industry. I am so glad you are not in the games industry.
My Sega Genesis Mini would sell like 4 copies to the 4 of us. But
so then just get an emulator machine or something.
but it would
man.
be so sick. It would be so awesome.
I would I would love Splatterhouse 3. That
You're
was one of
telling
my.
me that
That
you
was
would
one of my
rather
alts.
play Sonic 2 over Splatterhouse 2?
If I had
That's
not
not
played
the
any of these
point.
games, I mean,
That is the point. I want to make it as good as it could possibly be. Everybody and their mother has played Sonic to death. Nobody cares. If you
Arnie.
want to play a good 2D Sonic game, go play Sonic Mania. Like, it's free on PS Plus right now. I do not need to pay $80 to play Sonic 2.
I'm really holding myself back, Arnie.
I know, man.
I
It's
am
like
really holding myself. Look, I am not the greatest defender of Sonic. God knows I am
I
not.
tried to bail you out, Arnie. I tried, man.
I am going down with this ship so hard.
I think that Sonic is not necessarily, they're not necessarily great games. They're good games, but what you're saying is fucking insanity, man. You know, like how the hell are you gonna have a console without Sonic? A Sega console without Sonic? And,
No way.
you know, the fact that you have played it in every incarnation doesn't change the fact that it's still fucking Sonic. That's like
is.
releasing a Nintendo system without Mario.
And I understand
It's
that.
Yeah.
ridiculous,
That's-
it's stupid, and
that's
I
fine.
don't think that you would ever make it fly. So,
But like,
You're wrong.
Nobody cares. Like 70% of people who probably buy this thing will not play either of those games.
That
because
is-
they've
no,
played them
that's
to
not
death.
true.
that is a
That
blatant,
is not
that is a,
true.
no,
That
no.
is not
If
true.
you buy this,
it
it's
would
because
be
you
one
want
of
to
the
try
first
Sonic.
games
It
I
would.
load up.
No
Yeah, it would
way.
100%.
I wouldn't even
Sonic
look at
1? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
you
no.
hear that? You load up Sonic. It's just like bang,
All right,
bang,
go play your
bang,
DS.
Nostalgia
Go play your
I
trip.
would
DS.
not even look at
Arnie,
it. I own,
yeah, you're
like,
wrong, dude.
Go to your
more
corner,
than one
Arnie.
Genesis collection. I've never booted up either Sonic game on it.
Oh no, dude!
70%,
The beauty,
70% of
the
people
beauty
would
of
play
Sonic.
it. Like, come on.
Hell
Oh my god. No, man, like I would boot it up and like right off the bat you hear Sega and it's like, oh, I love this. And then you hear the theme song and it's like great. And then
No
you load
way.
up Green Hill Zone Act 1 and
over
you
it.
hear that
done
iconic
with it.
song and the beautiful colors and you know, you don't touch anything and Sonic taps his foot and that
no
look
way.
he's giving when he's tapping his foot is fuck Arnie.
Yeah.
That guy
Yeah.
has no idea what he's talking
own
about.
Arnie-
a Super
Arnie-
Nintendo Mini. I've never played Super Mario World on it. Like, is it an amazing game? Yes. Have I played it to death? Yes. Do I need to play it again? No. Like, find me one person who's like, I'm gonna buy this. Like, find me one person who like cares about,
Dude.
you know, like is a gamer or a game collector. That is like the only reason I'm buying this is for the ability to play Sonic 2 again.
Okay, we're off the rails here. Arnie gets the last point. He's making a good point, and we can disagree. You know,
Yeah.
and we certainly have, but we need to rein this in now.
I
'cause,
told
like,
you it was a spicy take. I told you it was a hot take.
I love it, man. I'm so glad.
Usually they don't
Dude,
bother.
more-
Usually they
more
don't
than I-
bother
more
me,
than I
dude.
I
expected.
appreciate it.
But
More
that
than
was very,
expected.
very hot. That was like scalding
I
take.
love it,
And
man.
then
I love it.
quick honorable mentions. I realized when I was going through this list how much I fucking love Konami, like old Konami. Rocket Knight Adventures,
Nice.
honorable mention.
Yeah.
Hyperstone
that's awesome,
Heist,
yeah.
honorable mention.
Cool.
Sunset
Yep.
Riders,
Yep.
honorable mention. And Zombies Ate My Neighbors, honorable mention.
Yep.
Those are all games that I would rather play over Sonic 2.
The Zombie Save My
stop
Neighbor
it.
come
Stop
out on the
it.
Genesis.
Why? I just told you that we're done with that.
I know, I'm sorry.
Why are you
But you were
egging
saying,
him on?
Ozzy, about Zombies Ate My Neighbors?
Did it come out on the Genesis? I'm just gonna
It
ignore
did.
anything you say
Yeah,
about Sonic.
It did.
Yes.
There was a
Okay.
Yeah, it did,
Genesis
it did,
version
yeah.
of Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
All right. Well, yeah, I would play that. I was gonna mention it's funny because you had probably a lot of the games that I would have included. So
Yeah.
you know that whole debacle aside, Hyperstone Heist is one that I really oscillated on just mentioning it because you know for fuck's sake, everyone loves the Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
I know.
Even kids nowadays love the Ninja Turtles, and they didn't grow up with them like we did at the time. You know, they had different versions, of course.
Yeah.
By Hyperstone Heist, you know, great beat 'em up. You know, it's great to see what Sega was doing with the beat 'em up genre. and then also have a sampler of what Konami was doing with the beat 'em up genre. And, it's more weapons based because you have, the different Ninja Turtles. It's not as great as Turtles in Time. I think that's a general consensus, but it's still a very damn good game. Great 4-player game. I guess that's part of the reason why it's not included, because you don't really have 4-player capability.
Right.
In the Genesis.
Yeah.
Mini. But yeah, man, I mean, I think that it would have been a smash hit, but of course there are licensing issues and stuff. I don't even know who has the license nowadays. I think it's Activision that has the license for
it. Was of
Ninja
all
Turtles.
these, the one I was saddest about was Rocket Knight Adventure. Like, I would have loved to play that game.
That's a damn good game, man. I mean, Rocket Knight, I'm glad that you reminded me of it, because if I had remembered it, I would have probably included it in one of mine, because again, one of those underrated games that doesn't get many mentions, but it's colorful. It has a charming character. It wasn't that age where they were trying to do different platformers, like with different mascots and stuff, but it doesn't feel like it's pandering in any way. And you kind of have that, you can hang from, with your tail and stuff like that. It's a good game, man. It's a damn good game. And of course you have the rocket pack, which is great.
That whole mechanic is just like, adds like a whole new level to that game that makes it stand out a whole lot. Like you said, there are already mechanics that like make it not your typical 16-bit platformer, but just all around that game is super solid. And I've never been able to like really play it for, an extended period of time. And that's one that I've always wanted to get my hands on.
All right.
So Paul, what would you do?
Okay. So it's funny. I actually, my choices are very close to Mike's. Which probably says a lot about why we're friends.
It's like you grew close together.
Yeah. Oh, and much like Mike, there is only one here that's like for like, and then the other two are just like whatever. So we'll start with the like for like one. I would take out Light Crusader.
Nice.
I agree with you. That's a good call.
It's a treasure game, but that's about the only interest one can have in it. It's not great. And I would 100% put in Warsong.
Yes. Obviously.
Interesting.
Which is,
that's a good pick.
as we know, is Langrisser, released on the Mega Drive. But like, there are no strategy RPGs on this system. And
the Shining Force.
There's Shining Force. It's the only one.
Of course there is. Yeah. I can't believe I forgot about that. But fuck it. Add another one. Warsong is a very, very different experience from Shining Force. Shining Force is more, it's more Fire Emblem with like the one character versus one character. Whereas Warsong, you have your commanders and you can purchase, groups of units, like battalions, if you want to call them that. And, like the game is amazing. It has branching class paths. It has phenomenal music.
Yeah.
And it totally should be there. Like, I don't know who even owns the license. Like, it was released by Treco. I don't know who owns the license to that now, but like, I can't imagine it'd be that difficult to get it.
I don't know. Langrisser seems like, a quick aside, Langrisser seems like a nightmare in terms of the series and kind of where it's been. Like, I don't even know. Yeah. Like, I know it basically just fizzled out, and I'm not even sure who still has it or if they're still making games.
Yeah, I'm done with that choice, Paul.
They still are, yeah. Sorry, I was gonna say they made like Langrisser Mobile. There is a company now that owns the license, and I think Langrisser Mobile is good, but we're not getting into that. Sorry, Ozzy, you were gonna say.
No, I agree with that choice, especially if you're taking out Light Crusader, because Light Crusader, it's unlike other Treasure games in that it feels so painfully generic. It's very unlike Treasure. Even McDonald's Treasureland Adventure had more character than Light Crusader.
Yeah.
It's a very, kind of like grim dark kind of style, like very dark fantasy, generic style, kind of like in the vein of Conan, etc. And, you already have Landstalker, so you already have an isometric RPG, so why include Light Crusader? I'm very befuddled by this inclusion in Light Crusader, which was also included in the Sega Genesis collection. So I'm glad you took it out, but it's there are some merits to it, but it's not necessarily one that belongs to be there.
Yeah. Next, I would take out World of Illusion. Much like Mike, I don't need that much Disney. We have Castle of Illusion. Castle of Illusion is like It's the classic. It's the one that kind of put the whole Disney platformer. I wouldn't say it put it on the map, because we did have DuckTales on the NES, and we had a whole series of Capcom NES ones. But as far as the Genesis was concerned, Castle of Illusion was like a watershed moment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantasia, not good.
No, terrible.
But Castle of Illusion led to Quackshot, led to World of Illusion.
Yep.
Like, great game. Let's leave it in there. World of Illusion gets the boot.
Yeah.
And like you suggested, Mike, I would put in Zero Wing.
Nice.
Because, like, I mean, okay, so first of all, you could use another shoot 'em up on this collection. We have Thunder Force 3, and am I wrong? Is that it? Like, I don't have, I'm going through the list here, and I don't really see anything.
I think that might be it. I mean, I know in
Yeah.
Japan and in Asia, they have Musha.
They have Musha. But
Seriously?
Yeah, but like, yeah. So, I
that's
mean,
what I was
I don't know
saying.
why on this system where you have shoot 'em up after shoot 'em up, it's like,
That's right.
you know, one of the best shoot 'em up systems ever made. I don't know why you wouldn't have more of them.
Yeah.
At least one.
Yeah.
And Zero Wing is really good.
Yeah, it's a good game.
It's another Toa Plan game. You know, it was released, I think, after Hellfire. So they had Truxton, Hellfire, and then Zero Wing. As we are all aware, it has an English translation already made. So, you know, they don't have to spend any money, so to speak, on localizing.
Yeah.
And aside from it, and you know what? I'm not including it because it's a good game. I'm including it because it is one of the two godfathers of internet memes.
Yes.
You have All Your Base and Star Wars Kid.
Yeah.
Between All Your Base and Star Wars Kid, like, man, I remember when the whole, you know, All Your Base thing blew up. It was hilarious in a way that none of us had ever really experienced before. These internet memes that go viral, like, that was an entirely new thing. And it's like this hilarious thing, and you're sharing it with, you know, thousands, millions of people. Whole new thing. I would include it there just for that, like, historical nugget. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I know what he's saying.
So, finally, much like Mike, I would take out Virtua Fighter 2. Nobody's asked for Virtua Fighter 2. It doesn't look good. Moving on.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, because Road Rash is on the Mini, I can see that they would be able to get Electronic Arts games. Perhaps licensing is an issue for this game. I don't understand how. I'm getting passionate here. I don't understand how you don't include NHL 94.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought it up.
I just, like, if I walked into a room, let's say I walked into like a wedding reception, and I went up to the mic and I just said, NHL 94 is the best sports game ever made. People would look at me like I'm crazy.
Thunderous applause.
But I get any room I walk into where I say NHL 94 is the best sports game ever made, I'm not getting laughed out of that room.
Yeah, that's true.
It is in the conversation. It is a classic game.
Was this the first NHL game that EA released in the franchise?
No, they released NHL Hockey. That was the first one. That was released in 92,
Yep.
and then they released NHL 93,
Yep.
and then 94. 94 is the first one where they brought in the one-timer, and it plays so beautifully. Like, the beauty of NHL is the simplicity. The reason why we revere NHL 94 so much is because it has the perfect combination of simplicity but enough complexity in there that you can do all kinds of weird stuff. You know, the hitting, the sound effects, obviously, like I said, the one-timers. You have all these elements that just kind of make it perfect. And I don't think they've ever been able to replicate it. Don't get me wrong. Modern NHL games are really good, but you kind of have to learn how to play them.
Yeah.
And NHL 94, you pick up a controller and you start playing, and that's all there is to it. It's instant fun.
It was legit a game that, I mean, it was another one of those up there with Streets of Rage, where many a sleepover was spent just playing it all night. It was, like Paul's saying, immediately intuitive. anybody could pick up the controller and sort of understand, all you got to do is like, okay, which button is to check? Okay, which button's to pass? Which button's to shoot? All right, go. And then, just fun.
Yeah, like, I mean, I don't think I have to elaborate on it anymore because you just said all we need to know, which is it's fun. Anyhow, those are my picks. I didn't mean to get so passionate there, but God damn, I love NHL 94, man.
Can I just mention a few honorable mentions since I didn't do them?
Go ahead. I have one too, but you go ahead, Ozzy.
Okay, just real quick. Mutant League Football.
Yes.
If you're gonna have another sports game.
Yes.
Good
I
call.
was
Yeah.
that was
Mutant
one
League
that I was
Football.
considering adding as well.
Yeah. Glay Lancer, another amazing, shmup.
Oh, nice.
So let's do that. Eliminate Down, another great shmup that's very obscure. So just a few more. And the other ones Arnie mentioned. Oh no, one final one. Troubleshooter.
Oh,
yes.
deep cut.
Yep.
Yeah, another like crazy, shmup where you play as two girls on hover packs, shooting.
Fits the anime. That fits the anime criteria.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyways, I just needed to get those in.
If I can,
I have one more, just
go
a
for it.
quick one. Sorry. I agree with Arnie about Sonic Spinball. Actually, Sonic Spinball is secretly not that great. It's actually like a good pinball game, but the sound in that game is so grating. Like it's almost unplayable. It just sounds horrible. It has like that kind of Electronic Arts era, early Genesis sound where it's like, ugh. No wonder you guys made sports games because you couldn't make music. Like, this is terrible. And just replace it with Dragon's Fury, because I do like having a pinball game in there.
Nice. Yeah.
So why not just have the good one?
That would have been really cool, actually.
And Mike, you were gonna say.
Oh, I was just gonna say I'm pretty surprised. There were two that I really thought were gonna come up, and they didn't come up. And one was Herzog Zwei. I thought was totally gonna come up. I didn't put it down because I'm like, oh no, they're totally gonna bring it up. I mean, you guys discussed it at length in the Technosoft. There's not much more that needs to be said about it that was already said, but it's pretty. I understand why it's not on the list, but as like a historical thing, I was like, man, it'd be really cool if it was, and I'm sure it would totally get a new generation of fans. And the other one was Alien Soldier. I know we talked about it before, but I was like, man, I was really surprised, Paul. I really thought you were going to nail down on Alien Soldier because that game.
I would totally add those two if we hadn't talked about them, sometime in the past. It was just kind of like we've already spoken at length about how great those games are.
Yeah.
So, but I would definitely add them.
And Herzog's Way is going to get a Switch release very soon.
Oh,
and that's the other reason.
That's awesome. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's the other reason I didn't bring it up.
I don't have a Switch. Yeah. I'm unclean. I'm unpure.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. Fist bump.
I will say the one thing that I don't think we talked about in my insane rant, but I think people will also wonder why I didn't cut Mean Bean Machine. And my answer to that really quickly is, honestly, I kind of like that there is a puzzle game in there. I know they have columns, but Mean Bean Machine is Puyo Puyo, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty
and
much.
So I like the idea of having a Puyo Puyo game. Now, if we could get a regular Puyo Puyo game, I probably prefer that to Mean Bean Machine. But I feel like even though I'm not a huge, like in this era of gaming, not a huge puzzler guy, I feel like there has to be at least a couple. I mean, there's 3 with Tetris, so maybe that's too many. So maybe we should just cut Mean Bean Machine now that I'm thinking more about it.
No, don't. It's a good game. I don't see any reason to cut it. Yeah, it's a good game and it's on theme with the mascot, Sega's treasured mascot, Sonic the Hedgehog, that they can just never remove.
I'm sorry,
from
Ozzy,
anything.
I love you.
Listen, we'll still love each other. All of this was just for theatrical purposes. I swear that I'm not going to get away from this podcast and go and hunt down Arnie.
Right. I want to clarify that I did say before all that Sonic 3 was the one I would have wanted.
Absolutely.
Because I know that you all disagree with me, but I just love Sonic 3 and Knuckles so much, and I think I think it's because I love Knuckles and I like playing as Knuckles.
But I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that, Arnie. Just before I get into that, I just want to like a quick 20 seconds. The difference between Sonic 1, 2, and then 3 and Sonic and Knuckles is that those latter two games played, much slower and more deliberate, and it kind of killed the pace of Sonic a little bit. So if you were to show off, what Sonic was all about, and you gave them Sonic and Knuckles, anyone that hasn't played it or that doesn't really have a lot of experience would either say, oh, this is kind of like a slower paced game, or say, this is not the Sonic I remember.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But I don't know. I guess it's just personal taste of mine. Like, I always preferred the play of Sonic 3. I think because, at least in my mind, because of that slow downness. Because a lot of the time I felt like when I was going super fast in Sonic, like doing what I was supposed to be doing, I felt like I got punished a lot by, either spikes that I couldn't see coming up or, enemies that, I just didn't have time to avoid. And a lot of that falls on me just not being very good at Sonic. But I kind of like that with Sonic and Knuckles, it was a little more methodical and I could sort of pick my spots a little better.
Okay. No, fair enough.
Fair enough. Anyhow. All right, guys, I think we're ready to wrap it up, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like one other thing, I feel like one other thing, though, is that everybody listening, don't think that we're narking on the Genesis Mini, because it sounds like we were just tearing it apart.
Oh,
but the fact still remains,
oh my God,
in terms of lineup, there's a couple duds, sure, but it's really solid. It's awesome. And if you're interested in it, get it. Like, do it.
I'm sad that we didn't actually mention this until now, Mike, because you're right. I think overall, like, in terms of, like, the price point, like, what you get for it, and, everything that's sort of done, this is probably my favorite Mini that I've heard about so far, just because it really has everything. It has the quality and it also has the quantity of games.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you'll never be starving for a good choice, Kid Chameleon notwithstanding.
But yeah, sorry, let's go, Paul. Let's do it.
All right, so anyhow, yeah, we're wrapping it up, man. Again, everybody, thanks for listening. Just a quick reminder, if you enjoy the show, tell a friend. Rating on iTunes or whatever the Apple Podcasts app, whatever they
We're going to get a lot of 1-star ratings on this one.
I know, because we don't know what we're talking about. No, 5 stars, please, everybody.
When you say we...
Great show. That guy Paul needs to go, is what the review is going to say.
No, it's
He's an idiot.
If you see a review by like Sonic 3 fan 95, that's me.
Anyhow, if any of you want to get in touch with Mike and get career advice, you can find him on Instagram at Dr_Heckfire. And you can find us on the Region Free Gamers podcast Instagram. We're also on Twitter. On Instagram, we are at Region Free Gamers podcast. On Twitter, we're at Region Free Gamer. You can check out the episodes on YouTube. Same thing. You're probably listening to it one way or another, but if you need another format, we're also on YouTube. And yeah, that's it. Hey guys, thanks a lot, man. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you
all.
All
right, take care, everyone.
Oh, this is not going to be good.